Good evening, I'm Atlas Morgan. If you watched our morning briefing, you know we led with the Israeli strike on the Assembly of Experts in Qum. That was the biggest story 8 hours ago. It is no longer the biggest story tonight. Since this morning, Israel has sent ground troops into southern Lebanon. Hezbollah has declared open war. The U.S. Navy has been ordered to escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. And Secretary of State Rubio said the strikes are about to get bigger. 6 stories tonight, 4 of them involve the expanding war. 2 of them remind you the world keeps turning regardless. Let's go. This morning we reported on the widening theater of the Iran conflict. Tonight, it has widened again. Israeli ground forces crossed into southern Lebanon today, seizing positions beyond the 5 posts they've held since the November 2024 ceasefire. The IDF's 91st Galilee Division deployed at several points along the border. Defense Minister Israel Katz said he and Prime Minister Netanyahu authorized the military to advance and take control of additional strategic positions to prevent attacks on Israeli border communities. The IDF called it forward defense. Hezbollah's response was unambiguous. Mahmoud Kamadi, the deputy head of Hezbollah's political council, said this: "The Zionist enemy wanted an open war, which it has not stopped since the ceasefire agreement, so let it be an open war." He added that patience has its limits and the era of patience has ended. Israel ordered residents of more than 80 villages in southern Lebanon to evacuate immediately, at least 1,000 meters from their homes. The Lebanese Health Ministry reports 52 killed and 154 wounded from Israeli airstrikes, including a senior Hezbollah intelligence official and a Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander. 28,000 people have been displaced. Hezbollah fired more than a dozen rockets and several drones at northern Israel today. 1 person was lightly injured in the Galilee. An anti-tank missile was fired at IDF ground forces with no damage. Here's the connection that matters. This front opened because of the Iran war. Hezbollah launched rockets at Israel for the first time since the November ceasefire on the day Khamenei was killed, calling it revenge for the blood of the supreme leader. Israel responded with 70 strikes overnight, and now there are troops on the ground. The Lebanese government responded by announcing a ban on Hezbollah's military activities and calling for the group to hand its weapons to the state. That would have been unthinkable a week ago. Meanwhile, Syria has deployed thousands of troops, armor, and Grad rocket launchers to the Lebanese border. Ahmed al-Shara's U.S.-friendly government in Damascus is blocking Hezbollah supply routes into Syria. The regional map is being redrawn in real time. If Lebanon is the new front, the Strait of Hormuz is the economic front, and the president responded to that today. This is the story that moved markets this afternoon. President Trump announced that the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will immediately provide political risk insurance for all maritime trade traveling through the Gulf. And if necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. His words on Truth Social: "No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world." The market heard that. The Dow, which had plunged 1,277 points at its worst, recovered to close down just 403 points. That's an 850-point swing on a single social media post. The S&P 500 finished down 0.94%. Nasdaq down 1.02%. Still a rough day, but nothing like where it was headed. Oil is the headline number. Brent crude surged to $83.83 a barrel, up almost 8% on the day. WTI hit $77.05. Oil is up more than 15% since Operation Epic Fury began 3 days ago. Now the reality check. According to Lloyd's List reporting, U.S. Navy officials separately told tanker executives there is presently no availability for an escort mission. No tankers have been escorted yet. This is an announcement and a commitment, not an operation currently underway. The major shipping lines, Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, CMA CGM, all remain suspended. Roughly 150 tankers are still anchored in open Gulf waters. The insurance piece is real and immediate. The escort piece is a promise. Markets responded to the signal. Whether the follow-through matches, it will determine where oil goes next. The president is signaling protection of commerce. His Secretary of State is signaling escalation. Secretary of State Rubio appeared on Capitol Hill this morning before briefing both chambers of Congress on Operation Epic Fury. What he said to reporters beforehand was direct. His words, "We're going to unleash Chiang on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks as the two most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it." For those unfamiliar, Unleash Chiang is a Cold War-era rallying cry from the Korean War, when American hawks wanted to remove constraints on Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces against communist China. Rubio was using it as shorthand for removing the gloves. He was explicit about nuclear weapons. There is no way in the world that this terroristic regime was going to get nuclear weapons, not under Donald Trump's watch. And he framed the entire campaign as preemptive. The president is determined we were not going to get hit first. It's that simple. What does increase in scope mean practically? CENTCOM has been targeting Iran's missile infrastructure, nuclear sites, leadership, and naval assets. Scope expansion signals broadening beyond those categories to additional military targets. Rubio said the U.S. would not deliberately target civilian infrastructure. Tomorrow, the Senate votes on a war powers resolution introduced by Senator Tim Kaine. The House votes on a bipartisan measure from Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie later this week. Both are expected to fail. The debate is happening. The military operation is accelerating regardless. While the Middle East burns, Americans voted today, and the results matter. Texas held its primary today, and before a single vote was counted, more than $122 million had been spent on the Senate race alone. That's a record for any Texas primary ever. On the Republican side, it's a three-way contest. Senator John Cornyn, seeking a fifth term against Attorney General Ken Paxton and Representative Wesley Hunt. Cornyn and his allies spent roughly $70 million in advertising, but polling heading into today showed Cornyn and Paxton in a statistical dead heat. The expectation among most Republican operatives, a May 26 runoff between the two. Cornyn represents the Republican establishment. Paxton represents the MAGA wing. This race is a proxy for who owns the party. On the Democratic side, Representative Jasmine Crockett against State Representative James Tallarico. The spending gap is stark. Tallarico and his backers spent more than $24 million compared to roughly $5 million for Crockett. Tallarico has the money. Crockett has the national profile. Whoever wins faces a general election that Democrats believe could be competitive in Texas for the first time in decades. North Carolina also voted today. Former Governor Roy Cooper is the heavy Democratic favorite. Former RNC Chair Michael Whatley leads the Republican field with Trump's endorsement. That Cooper-Whatley matchup is one of Democrats' clearest Senate pickup paths in the country. Results are still coming in tonight. We'll have them for you tomorrow morning. Completely different story. No geopolitics, just silicon. Apple announced its new MacBook Pro today with the M5 Pro and M5 Max chips, and the architecture is genuinely interesting. They're calling it fusion architecture. What that means, Apple is physically bonding two separate silicon dies into a single chip using advanced packaging, two brains sharing one skull. The result is an 18-core CPU with 6 of what Apple calls super cores, which they claim are the world's fastest CPU cores. The remaining 12 are high-performance cores. Overall CPU performance is up 30% over M4 Pro. The AI angle is the real headline. Apple embedded a neural accelerator directly into each GPU core, not as a separate block but distributed across every core. The claim, 4x AI performance compared to the previous generation, 8x compared to M1. If you're running local language models or AI image generation, this is the machine Apple is building for you. The M5 Max scales to a 40-core GPU with 50% faster graphics. Storage starts at 1 TB for Pro, 2 TB for Max with 2x faster SSD speeds. Prices start at $2,199 for the 14-inch Pro. Pre-orders open tomorrow. Available March 11. Apple also announced the MacBook Air M5 at $1,099, the iPhone 17e at $599 with MagSafe for the first time on the budget iPhone, and updated studio displays. A busy day in Cupertino while the rest of the world watches the Gulf. Last story looking up. NASA confirmed today that the Artemis II mission is targeting April 1 for launch. And no, that is not an April Fool's joke. The date is driven by orbital mechanics and lunar trajectory windows. The mission was delayed after engineers found a dislodged seal in a quick disconnect connector that blocked helium flow to the upper stage. A seal the size of your fist delayed a $4 billion rocket program by 6 weeks. They fixed it. The rocket is in the vehicle assembly building getting new batteries and range safety testing before rolling back to the pad later this month. When it launches, Artemis II will be the first crewed mission to the moon's vicinity since Apollo 17 in December 1972. That's a gap of more than 53 years. The last humans to see the moon up close were Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt. That was before the internet, before GPS, before the first iPhone. The crew makes history on its own. Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, who will become the first black person to travel to the moon. Mission specialist Christina Koch, the first woman to travel beyond low Earth orbit. And Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, the first Canadian. 4 people, 10 days, a free return trajectory around the moon and back. This isn't a landing. Artemis II will attempt that, targeting 2027, but Artemis II proves the vehicle can carry humans to deep space and bring them home. Everything that comes after depends on this flight. 6 stories. The war expanded today in ways we warned about this morning. There are now ground troops in Lebanon. There are promises of Navy escorts in the Gulf. There are promises of escalation from the Secretary of State. And there are votes being counted in Texas that will shape who governs during whatever comes next. And somewhere in Florida, a rocket is getting new batteries so it can take 4 people farther from Earth than any human has traveled in half a century. The fuller picture isn't always comfortable, but it's always worth having. I'm Atlas Morgan. Atlas holds the world. Morgan broadcasts it.